Shalom again. Welcome back to the Wild Branch Ministry. Welcome back to the end, revealed right out of the beginning. Let's just cut right back into the chase here. The last time we were together, we were having a continuing discussion of Abraham's seed and what Abraham's seed truly is. When we see the whole of Scripture from beginning to end, it becomes quite obvious that that idea of Abraham's seed and him being the father of all who believe and so forth is really talking about God's seed in Abraham. It's what's being referred to. And so whether Jew or Gentile, from the very beginning, who believed in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they were in and one with the homeborn, and they were called Abraham's seed. And so, remember, we were also, if I remember correctly, we were relating it to the first couple of passages in Bereshit chapter 5, in which the father now has a dilemma on his hands, as if God really has any problems he can't deal with, in which his creation, Adam and Eve, have rejected his word. He's removed his seed from them, and now Genesis chapter 5 verse 3 says that Adam's going to produce children in his image. Not God's image, but in his own image of Adam, which is basically what Romans chapter 5 is all about. All sin comes from one man, and redemption comes through one man. These contrast of these two men. And so Adam's only going to produce children in his image. Well, the Father has a problem now because he loves all the people in the world. And so the restoring of his seed in us comes by faith. And Paul's going to use these exact images particularly in the book of Romans, particularly in the book of Galatians, which I'm going to propose to you is virtually impossible to understand outside of the principle of the seed because of all the times that Paul talks about this. And many times we misunderstand what Paul is talking about because we don't grasp this, and this is why Peter said his words were hard to be understood. And so when we go to Galatians chapter 3, if you can bring that up on the screen, Paul's going to say the same thing. He's even going to go back and quote from this. He says, even as Abraham believed God, and it was accounted unto him for righteousness, even as it was then, is what he's saying. Even as you go back to the story of Abraham, know ye therefore that they which are of faith, no matter where you come from, the same are the children of Abraham. Which are of faith, the same are the children of Abraham. So what is he saying? He's saying the true children of Abraham that the Father is talking about are the ones who have my seed, God's seed in them. Those are the seed of Abraham. That's an important thing to grasp because we're going to have another seed which is going to be produced by teaching as well. And it's going to produce after its kind. It comes from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So the tree that is an enmity, if you will, with the tree of life, and revealed in the seed of the serpent, or the seed of the one that's at enmity with the seed of the woman, is, once again, words, I submit to you, is what's being talked about here. So when we go to Abraham, we see once again that in Abraham was both Isaac and Ishmael. Two seeds from two different trees. They both have the physical seed of Abraham, but one believes and the other does not. Simple as that. In Isaac, once again, Esau and Jacob. In Adam, Cain and Abel. So we had both of them in them. Now the Father has already given us this image, this teaching in the opening chapter of Genesis. So if we can bring that up now for you, we start out with Genesis chapter 1, verse 11, 22, and 28. I told you earlier that all living things, plants, animals, and people are told basically the exact same things. Genesis 1:11. God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed was in himself upon the earth, and it was so. After his kind, whose seed was in himself. So obviously there's something far more profound than just trees going on here. Then we go to Genesis 1:22, and it says, and God blessed them, that is the fowl and the beast and so forth that he's going to bring out in the next few verses. He said, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, let the fowl multiply in the earth. So the same concept goes down to the other living things called the beasts of the field. So in the first one, Genesis 1 verse 11, lemons are going to produce lemons. In chapter 1, verse 22, chickens are going to produce chickens. When we get to Genesis 1:28 and we have human beings now, God's going to say the same thing to them. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, and so on and so forth. Come on back to me now. So, same thing for the humans. Humans are going to produce what? Humans. Humans didn't come from apes or monkeys. Apes and monkeys, when I look outside the window, every time I look outside the window, a monkey is producing another monkey. Every time I look at a lemon, I see it produce another lemon. And the big distinction between monkeys and lemons and chickens and humans is that humans have the spirit of man and the spirit of God breathed in them. And so humans are given the ability to choose. Lemons are not given the ability to choose. They instinctively, through no choice of their own, produce more lemons. Pigs, through no choice of their own, only produce more pigs. With that simple little statement there, it is absurd to conclude that Yeshua died on the tree to make them clean. Pigs produce pigs. That's why the whole image of Peter's vision of the sheet in Acts chapter 10 was all about Cornelius. The focus was Cornelius, a human who, because humans can choose and pigs can't, he's trying to show him that the Cornelius has been redeemed and restored. Don't call him common anymore, because he is a human and he has the ability to be able to change. But pigs and fowls and unclean things do not. This is pretty much, it's not rocket science. Just put that before you again. Now, going back to, if we bring the next one up on the screen, Yochanan, or John, chapter 6, verse 63 and 64 says this: "It is the Spirit that quickens, the flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life. But there are some of you that do not believe. For Yeshua knew from the beginning." Now you may assume that that is only the beginning of his ministry, but see, who do we understand was the Word of God from the very beginning? He knew who were they that believed not and who should betray him. Now come on back to me. What's the basis of this? God is known from the beginning. There are those who believe and there are those who do not. There are those that man has planted and there are things that God has planted. And the Father said in Matthew, if I did not plant it, it will be rooted up. So once again, Abraham could have gone and planted his seed wherever he wanted to, and all he would have reproduced is more Abrahams. But God's seed in Abraham produces God's fruit, and that's why Abraham believed his voice, kept his commandments, his statutes, and his Torah. And that's, according to what Genesis chapter 26, verse 4 and 5, blesses all the families of the earth. And once again, these are the foundation that I want to lay, is that these words, these seeds in Genesis chapter 3:15 are words. They are teaching. Any word, I submit to you, that stands against the Word of God is at enmity with God. Whether it's the Quran, whether it's the Book of Mormon, whether it's an article by somebody, whether it's the Hindu Vedas and so forth, if it stands against the Word of God, if it teaches against the Word of God, it's at enmity with God. And I believe that's what's being put forth. Now, I wanted to lay that foundation down very clearly before we begin, because now we're going to get into the model or paradigm of Esau. And so before we get back to Esau, let's go to the end first. And let me preface it by saying this. In the past, in our programs, I'm sure I have taught on the concepts of Hebrew interpretation. In other words, how the Hebrew culture and the Hebrew people for centuries have interpreted and understand the scriptures from their perspective, from that thought process, which is also embedded That thought process is embedded in the Hebrew language itself, which is probably something we'll do in another program. And that is, every time we see a verse in the scriptures, from Genesis to Revelation, there are 4 levels of understanding that verse. And those levels will not contradict each other. And this is God's way. The reason why the Father does it this way is it's God's way of saying to the world that He, as opposed to us limited, tunnel vision, one-dimensional, pin-headed people, He is perfectly capable of teaching more than one thing in a verse. He's perfectly capable of doing it. So every verse in Scripture, I submit to you, has a literal meaning. We call that Peshat. Just the literal meaning of what the verse means without any other outside commentary or any other perspectives. Just exactly what it says. Kind of like a man that lived on an island, for example. Just give me one of the other ideas of Peshat. If you had a man that lived on an island all his life, just by himself. Just imagine this for a moment. And one day, a Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament, the whole Bible, drops out of the sky, lands in his lap. He goes, oh, wonderful, something other than a coconut. So he picks up the Bible, excuse me, he picks the Bible up, he reads it from cover to cover. He reads it from Genesis to Revelation, and he believes all of it. Let me ask you, what festivals do you think he would celebrate? What day do you think he would rest? What food do you think he would eat, and what things do you think he would not eat? If he didn't have any other outside perspectives or commentaries or religious organizations and views and agendas, just read it just exactly the way it is from cover to cover. What day do you think he would rest? That's kind of what the Peshat is all about as well. And so there's also what we call a remez, and that is the prophetic nature. Verses have a prophetic aspect of it. And once again, the testimony of Yeshua is the spirit of prophecy. All of the Bible is prophecy, if you will. And so the literal thing that's going on at the time and the prophetic view are true at the same time. Rather than choosing the literal view and writing terrible things about the people who have the prophetic view, which is what we in our religious system in America are really, really good at, or taking only the prophetic view and writing terrible, scathing things about the literal view of the text, which we are really, really good at. And then there is a drash view. In our culture, we call that kind of a homily. It's as if to say, there's something also in there that teaches me something that I can apply to myself today. In other words, I can read a verse and I can get the literal view of what was happening at the time, and I need to understand that. I see there's a prophetic aspect to the verse, and then I read it and I say to myself, okay, well, what's that got to do with me? What does this teach me about me now? How does this change my life now? That's called a drash. And then there's the sod. There's some things in the text that are not all out on the surface for everybody to do whatever they want with. They're kind of buried in the ground like a seed. That's why the English word seed comes from the Hebrew word sod. It's something hidden that you can't see, but it's actually the foundation of everything. And that's why the foundation of a building, the part that you can't see, is yesod. Yesod in the Hebrew. See? The sod. What's the difference? It has a yod. It has the Hebrew letter for his hand on it. When you take a sod, something hidden, and you put his hand on it, that's the yod, yesod. Now it becomes the foundation of a building that grows into a holy temple unto the Father. Ephesians chapter 2. And so this is one of the ways of which this beautiful language of your Bible is designed. And so when we go to Revelation chapter 13, verse 18, which is where we're going to go here in just a moment, I want you to keep in mind that there's several different aspects that the Father is revealing to us about the anti-Messiah or the Antichrist or the beast, the bad guy, in the end of days. We're going to see it in these coming programs. I'm going to show it to you in Hebrew, the revelation of who he is through the Hebrew language, through Arabic, and in Greek. There's something in all three languages, the way the languages are designed, that reveals something about the Antichrist in the last days, the Anti-Messiah or the beast, that is revealed in Revelation chapter 13, verse 18. So in other words, it's not just one-dimensional view, which is the way Revelation 13, 18 has traditionally been taught. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Let's bring it up on the screen. Some of you have seen this before. In Revelation 13, verse 18, here's what it says. It says, "Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast." Now that word number there in Greek is arithmos, which should sound familiar. That's where we get the English word arithmetic from. But in Hebrew it is mispar. Mispar. Count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. The thing I want to focus on right now, because we're going to bring this up and down as we go here. The one thing I want to focus on right now is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Okay, come back to me for a minute, and then we'll come back to this, because I want to reference to this so we get a full view of several things that are revealed in Revelation 13, 18 before we take it and trace it backwards all the way to the beginning. I've told you in the past that that's how we understand biblical words as well, because English is basically down at the bottom of the river when it's dumping into the Gulf of Mexico, and we trace the water that it comes from back up to the mountaintop. When we get it back to when it's clean and pure and pristine and full of energy. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to trace this word back. But let me also mention a couple of things I want you to focus on here. It's the number of a man. The word number there is mispar in Hebrew. Now this word, which comes from the root sefer. You've probably heard the term Sefer Torah, the book of Torah. So the root of this is the Hebrew word for book. Those things which are contained in a book, like a numbering of people, like the children of Israel were booked in the wilderness. Numbered in the wilderness. Mispar. Now that's not the name of that particular book. The book Numbers is Bamidbar in the Hebrew. But the numbering of the children of Israel in the wilderness contained in that book is Mispar. That's the noun of it. The root is safar, okay? It's sefer, which is a book. And so it means a multitude of people or a numbering of people, but it's also, once again, the root of the Hebrew word for a book. So I'm going to submit to you that the number of this entity, this anti-Messiah, this beast, it says here, is a booking. It's something in a book, is what I'm going to submit to you. The Father has his book. It's called the Book of Life. And we also have the Lamb's Book of Life, also mentioned in the book of Hit Galut. There's that word book. But I'm going to submit to you the enemy has his book. There's a book that, if you will, is the seed of the woman, and there's a book that stands against that. And any book that stands against the book is, if you can catch the drift of this, is against the Word of God. And so we have an enemy in which there's a revelation of the beast in the sense of a booking or a large gathering of people as well, because books record names. Remember, you blot their name out of the book of life. So books are designed to record names. So there's a lot of people here that's referencing to. And then it goes on, it says, "For it is the booking, if you will, of a man." I'm going to submit to you the book reveals who this a man was. Now, traditional religion for centuries now has focused on this number 666, or if you will, 666. Now, let's stop and do a little bit of historical background, if you will, on numbers and languages and so forth. In the Hebrew language and in the Greek language, and the same is similar in English and so forth, we have two different ways of looking at numbers, for example. We have Arabic numerals. Arabic numerals are 1, 2, 3, and 4 as they're written. A 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. And Arabic numerals are written out by almost any language. However, Hebrew, Greek, and English already have perfectly good words for 666. For example, the Hebrew word that's traditionally translated as one, okay, is echad. echad in the feminine, but echad in the Hebrew. Two, shatayim, and so forth, and then we go on up. Hebrew has perfectly good words for that. So does Greek. Greek has words for numbers, like one would be O-N-E, that kind of one, not the an Arabic one. And each one of those languages has that. And so when you're trying to express in Greek, for example, the number 7, not the Arabic 7, but the S-E-V-E-N, you would write hepta in Greek. Hepta is 7. Hex is 6, for example. And so in Greek and Hebrew already has perfectly good words for that. But one of the unique things about Hebrew, for example, is that Hebrew does not have words for Arabic numerals. The 1s, the 2s, the 3s, and the 4s that we write out. It does not have equivalent words for that. So what it does is it assigns a letter to each one of the Arabic numerals. And so the Aleph is 1, the Bet is 2, Gimel 3, Dalet 4, so on and so forth. The Greek language works the same way. There's a number also, an Arabic numeral assigned to the individual letters in Greek. Greek works the same way. And so in Greek, if you want to express 7, S-E-V-E-N, you say hepta. However, if you want to express the Arabic numeral 7, okay, then you write a totally different number. You write the 7th letter, you write a totally different word, the 7th letter of the Greek alphabet. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta. So it's zeta. Okay, zeta is the 7th letter. So if you want to express the Arabic word, numeral 7, you write zeta. In Hebrew, you write Zion and so forth. Okay? Now, so if the Greek wants to express 666, it would say hexakantioi, hexakanta hex. Say that fast 5 times. It would say hexakantioi, hexakanta hex. That is Greek for 600, S-I-X, and 66. But the dominant manuscripts of the book of Revelation, particularly this section, the ones that produce our most well-known English translations today, King James would be one example, the one that spread most all over the world. And when you get to this numeral right here, it does not say hexakasioi, hexakanta hex. Instead, in the Greek manuscript that produces most of these, it says it has just 3 Greek letters written there. There's just 3 Greek letters. Now, if we can bring that back up on the screen again. Back up on the screen, thank you. You'll see that Revelation 13, verse 18, at the very end of the word 603, which in normal Greek would be hexakasioi, hexakanta hex. Instead, in the Textus Receptus and others, it has just 3 Greek letters. And here they are. They're called a chi, a tsi, and a sigma. Now I want to hold that up there for just a minute on the screen, because this is the only thing that John would have been looking at in his days. This is what John would have been looking at. He would have been looking at just 3 Greek letters there. And because the numerical values of the letters in Greek works the same way as Hebrew, that's because Greek came right out of Hebrew in about 1050 BC. So Greek was very similar to Hebrew when it first began, as at least a known world language. And so some of the design of Hebrew is also seen early on in the Greek language as well. So we have a tsi that looks like an X there. We have that one in the middle, which is a chi is the first one, and then a tsi is the one in the middle, and then a sigma is the one at the end. Now come back to me for a minute. Now, each one of these Greek letters has a numerical value. The first one, the chi that looks like an X, is 600. The middle one, that looks just like a coiled up serpent, and we're going to come back to that later, is a numerical value of 60. The third one, the third letter, a sigma, has a numerical value of 6. Now, in the first century, it had a numerical value of 6. In the first centuries when these things were written. But since then, the sigma, which was in the 6th position of the Greek alphabet, was moved down now, and now it has a numerical value of 200. So through the process and evolutionary process of the Greek language, now it's been switched. On purpose? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not all that too conspiratorial. But I do know that there was a revealing of what this was in the first couple of centuries, where you don't see it now if you look at the Greek alphabet. But then it was a sigma. Not only was it in the 6th position, but it was the Greek word stigma. It was called stigma, not sigma. Only later on did they call it sigma. And you can guess stigmata, stigma as in to pierce. That Greek word sigma means to pierce. Stigma means to pierce something. Now, it's not by coincidence that the Greek language was patterned right after the Hebrew language, aleph, bet, alpha, beta. And that Greek letter in the 6th position matched the vav, which is the 6th letter of the Hebrew language. The Hebrew letter vav is the letter of the nail, that which pierces. So in the 1st century, the 6th letter of the Hebrew means to pierce. The 6th letter of the Greek, stigma, meant to pierce. And this is involved in this, and we'll cover this in much more detail later. In the meanwhile, cling to your roots. Your days may be long, and you will prosper in everything you set your hand to do. Shalom, goodbye. Barely made it.